We've all been there, exhausted, overwhelmed, and wondering if we're doing enough. But the truth is, self-care has become a culture of performance, where we're expected to be perfect, productive, and poised at all times. And yet, beneath the surface, many of us are secretly struggling with feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and burnout. We live in a society that's constantly telling us to prioritize self-care. Scrolling through social media, we're bombarded with images of serene landscapes, yoga retreats, and peaceful meditation practices. But behind the scenes, many of us are secretly struggling to keep up with these expectations. Think about it. How often do you see someone posting a self-care Sunday on Instagram, only to have their friends comment with envy? We might feel like we're not doing enough, that we need to be more productive, more creative, and more well-rounded. But the truth is, self-care isn't just about adding another activity to your already overflowing schedule. For some of us, it's about recognizing when we've been running on empty for too long. Like a car with a dwindling fuel tank, our mental health can only take so much before it starts to break down. We might feel like we're stuck in neutral, unable to move forward without risking burnout. So, how do you know if your self-care efforts are actually making things worse? Let's be honest. We've all been there. Signing up for a yoga class, buying an expensive face mask, or scheduling a relaxing massage. But what happens when these activities start to feel like a chore rather than a treat? When the pressure to be present becomes overwhelming, and every moment of downtime feels guilty, you might find yourself overthinking about whether you're doing self-care right, or worrying that others will judge your choices. Think back to a time when you tried to prioritize self-care, but felt like it wasn't making a dent in your stress levels. Maybe you spent hours planning the perfect solo weekend getaway, only to feel anxious about not being productive enough. Or perhaps you invested in a pricey wellness program, but ended up comparing yourself to others who seemed more enlightened. These situations can be a sign that our self-care efforts are actually perpetuating people-pleasing and overthinking patterns. As we continue to explore the complexities of self-care culture, I want to take a step back and examine something that might seem counterintuitive at first: the connection between our childhood experiences and the way we practice self-care today. Think about it like this. When we're young, our brains are constantly trying to make sense of our environment. We absorb messages from our caregivers, our culture, and our surroundings, and these messages shape who we become. But what if some of those early messages were painful or overwhelming? What if they left us with a deep-seated feeling that we need to be good enough or constantly strive for perfection? For many of us, self-care becomes a way to cope with the anxiety and pressure we felt in childhood. We might overplan our days, over-exercise, or over-mediate as a way to feel safe and in control. But what if I told you that these behaviors are actually a cry for help from your past? They're a desperate attempt to recreate the security and love we didn't receive as children. Think back to the last time you spent hours in a bubble bath, only to emerge feeling temporarily relaxed but still stuck in your problems. Or perhaps you've been scrolling through self-care Pinterest boards, pinning recipes for face masks and essential oil diffusers, but never actually making the time to try them out. We often confuse self-sabotage with self-care when we're trying to fill an emotional void. For instance, someone might be struggling with high-functioning depression, but instead of addressing it head-on, they turn to excessive exercise or extreme dieting as a way to cope. It's like trying to put out a fire by spraying perfume on the flames. It may temporarily mask the problem, but ultimately, it just makes things worse. We're not talking about self-care that genuinely nourishes us. We're talking about the desperate attempts to feel better, even if only for a fleeting moment. When we're feeling overwhelmed, it's easy to get caught up in the idea that self-care is a quick fix for our problems. We buy the face masks, take the yoga classes, and post about our me time on social media. But what if I told you there are other ways to prioritize your well-being? Instead of trying to fit into this idealized version of self-care, let's talk about practical alternatives that can actually help. For example, Have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions of a busy day without really expressing yourself? You might not need a meditation retreat, but maybe what you need is a 10-minute walk outside to acknowledge your emotions. Or perhaps you're feeling drained from trying to please everyone else. In that case, setting healthy boundaries with loved ones can be a more powerful act of self-care than buying a scented candle. Think about it like this. When you're on a long hike and you need to rest, do you take a nap under the stars or do you fix your water bottle and keep moving? The right tools and habits can make all the difference in how we navigate our mental health journey. We've talked about the importance of self-care, but what happens when that self-care is actually a band-aid on a deeper wound? When we're constantly being told to toughen up or be stronger, it can be hard to know what our emotional needs really are. I remember a friend who was going through a breakup and everyone kept telling her, just get over it. But what about the fact that she felt sad and angry? Why should those emotions be invalid just because they're uncomfortable? We often talk about self-care as if it's a luxury, something we can only afford when things are calm. But what about when life is messy and overwhelming? When relationships are toxic or society is pushing us to conform? The truth is, our emotional needs don't take a break just because the world doesn't validate them. We need to learn how to listen to ourselves, even when it's hard. As we explore the idea that emotional neglect can actually be a sign of self-protection, not weakness, I want to share an example from my own life. Growing up, I was constantly bombarded with messages about how I should feel, what emotions were acceptable or unacceptable. But as a child, I had no language for processing these feelings, and so I developed a sort of emotional armor, a shield that allowed me to protect myself from the world's expectations. This wasn't about being tough or resilient, but rather about surviving in a world where my emotions weren't valued. Think of it like a seedling in a forest, competing for sunlight and water. The seedling can either stretch its delicate roots towards the surface, trying to adapt to an environment that's hostile to its growth, or it can dig deep into the earth, conserving energy and waiting for more favorable conditions. Emotional neglect is often about digging those roots deeper, not because we're afraid of our emotions, but because we know they won't be understood or validated. As we've explored the complexities of self-care culture, I want you to know that you're not alone in feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to prioritize your own needs. It's like being stuck in a never-ending cycle of guilt-tripping yourself into buying yet another face mask or yoga mat, only to feel like it's just not enough. You see, true well-being isn't about accumulating more stuff or checking off boxes on someone else's list. It's about embracing the messy, imperfect process of becoming who you truly are. And that can be scary. I remember when I first started practicing self-care, I thought it meant creating a peaceful morning routine and sipping matcha lattes in a serene garden. But what I found was that it actually took me deeper into my own vulnerabilities. I had to confront the parts of myself I'd been trying to hide for so long. So, take a deep breath and remember that you are not alone in this struggle. You're part of a larger community that's learning to redefine what self-care means to them. As we close this conversation, I want you to remember that self-care isn't about achieving perfection or external validation. It's about embracing your imperfections and setting boundaries that honor your needs. You're enough, just as you are. Don't let the pressure of others' expectations silence your own voice. Trust yourself, take small steps toward self-compassion, and know that it's okay to stumble. You're part of a community that's learning to redefine what self-care means, together. And remember, you don't have to face this journey alone.